believe this is the final one for this semester in our Provost Conversations on Teaching and Learning, and I apologise for having had to miss a couple of them. They send me off and do other things occasionally, so I can't always get to my own events, which is not good. But I'm really pleased that Dr. Hawkins, Janice Hawkins, is going to lead us today in the conversation, and particularly about students, publications, and how we get them through that crucial step. Sometimes how we get ourselves through that crucial step, I think. Yeah. Janice has been a faculty member here at Old Dominion University since 2001. She's the Chief Academic Advisor for the School of Nursing within the College of Health Sciences, and she teaches in both the traditional and the distance learning programs. She's attended a writing for publication workshop sponsored by the School of Nursing. And after that was when she increased her awareness of writing and the importance of working with the students in putting their submissions together. And so several of the papers that she's worked with the students have been accepted for publication recently, which is a great thing. Congratulations. And today she's going to offer to us some of the lessons that she's learned during that process, some hints, I hope, and how to collaborate successfully with students, and sort of what not to do as well, I'm sure. And so we hope that you'll be engaged in the conversation, as you have been, many of you, in many of these conversations, and look forward to hearing what Janice has to say. So thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Dr. Simpson. Thank you guys for coming too, especially on a cold day to have to walk over. This is a big change of weather from a couple days ago. So I was talking to Kirby and Gordon before we got mic'd up here, because I don't wear one of these very often. And it reminded me of just maybe 3 months ago at church. We had someone that had to stand up and do a ministry moment before the church, before the service. And so they got mic'd up, and then they left and they were done with their part, and then they went to the bathroom. And of course they were still mic'd up, so we heard them get started until the tech guys were scrambling to get them turned back down. We could hear the clanking and the obvious sounds of the, so I made sure I didn't do that before I came. So Kirby promised he'd turn me down if that happened. Like Dr. Simpson said, I am over in the College of Nursing, and for about the past year and a half, we've actually had a consultant who's come over as part of our initiative to increase our scholarly productivity. And I've pretty much every time she's come, I've actually taken advantage of every workshop that she's offered. So I was going to share with you some of the things that I've learned from her. And so I titled it Partnering with Students for Publication. I'll share a few things. Most of the things I'm going to talk about today do involve students, because I think that's exciting. That's what we're all here for. And then a couple of other ideas too. My hope is that this will generate ideas in you that you might want to write, publish, or present about. I kind of did, because I'm, a teacher, I kind of did objectives. I said our conversation, what we're going to do is share some successful stories for publication. And I have this disclaimer, because I need you guys to know that I'm not tenure-track faculty, and that a lot of the things that we've published successfully have not necessarily been the high-impact journals, but it has been exciting and a good place to start. And I think if you're not, if you're really at the beginning phase of this, I think sometimes it's nice to shoot for some success. And then as you learn the process, then go a little bit higher in some of the higher-impact journals. And the good news is that that has been the culture as we've started out. Kind of anything that I've tried to do has been applauded and encouraged by our chair and by Kathy, our consultant. So she's kind of a cheerleader, and you get something out there and she encourages that, and that feels good to you. So I kind of, it's tough to get those, we've probably all had them if you've presented anything at all. It's tough to get those rejection letters back. So I told Kathy when we started, I said, I really want some success here so that I don't quit. So I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to discuss some lessons learned, because being a newbie at this, I really took the long road on quite a few things, and got a little smarter about that as I've gone, and I'm sure I've got a lot to learn. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about maybe some of the things that you're doing. We all work very hard here, and to add anything to our plate is next to impossible. And I think possibly the only way to do that is to really turn what you're doing every day into a publishable product. We're not going to have time to add anything to our work schedule. So I attended, like I said, a mandatory workshop, and the workshop was called Turning Your Everyday Practice into Publication. Kathy Heinrich was our consultant. And so when I went to that workshop, she started generating ideas about things you need to do. We actually were supposed to show up with something that we do every day that might be publishable. Well, I had no idea what that might be, but sitting in that workshop, I went anyway and listened to her talk. I started thinking about our 403 class. I teach in the RN to BSN program, and our 403 class is the capstone portfolio class for that program. And every year when I go to those presentations, I'm pretty much moved to tears every year, because we have students in that class that stand up and tell us that they finished their GRE, then they became a CNA, then they became an LPN, then they became an RN, now they're finishing up their BSNs, and many of them are planning to go get their master's degrees. And many of them bring their kids to these presentations and show them that they've actually now, that they've finished their 4-year degree. It's a fun place to be. It's a celebration when they present these projects. But what's also astounding about it is when they start telling us what they're doing in their hospitals, it's really changed practice. And what's even funnier about it, I think, is that when students come to our RN to BSN program, a lot of times they're a little bit reluctant. They're already RN, so they're thinking, what can you really do for me other than my employer wants me to get a bachelor's degree? I don't really want to be here. And at the end of the program, they've really changed their tune. Well, standing there listening to some of these students, or I guess I was sitting there as they were giving their presentations, listening to some of the things they've done, I thought, well, if this is exciting to me, this is probably something exciting to read about. So I approached one of the students, and this will be one of the lessons learned. Anita Shell presented that day, and she works up at the Magnet Hospital in Jefferson and in Charlottesville. And she gave her presentation. I thought that was really exciting. So I just walked up to her after the presentation and said, if you want to write that up, I'll work with you and we'll see if we can get something published. Well, we did. We actually were very successful to have, it's going to be, I guess it'll be Nursing 2012 when it comes out. Our article was about, magnet hospitals are attracted to the BSN. That's the push for nurses to go back. But what's in it for me? And we wrote up really all where she had been at the beginning of the program until the end of the program. And that is going to be published next year, but I'll talk a little bit about lessons learned during that process when I get to that slide. Another everyday practice something that I've done is I take students on study abroad trips. We have one scheduled for Dominican Republic in March, and I'm already thinking, okay, what can I write about for that? I've already pulled my OB journal aside because they have a new section in that journal called Global Health. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really us. We're working with the maternal child population when we go. So now I'm already kind of looking ahead to see what we can write up for that. But on the study abroad trip to El Salvador, I kind of did the same thing because this was early. And I approached Chanel Villay. She's one of our, she's a graduate now, works over at Centera, but at the time she was one of our pre-licensure students. And said, Chanel, why don't we write up something about our trip here and what we've done, our service learning abroad trip, and you can talk about what it's done for you, and then I'll talk about from the faculty perspective what we think it does to enlighten students and to change perspectives for them, increase their cultural awareness. So Chanel kept her end of the bargain, wrote something up and sent it on to me, and I had to take that and turn it into a manuscript, which we submitted. This will also be out early next year in Journal of Christian Nursing. And then at the same time, I included this one. This wasn't exactly with students, but as part of the assignment, didactic content for that course, I had the students write up their reflections on that program. Now, this was not planning ahead. That was just part of the program. Now I'm a little bit smarter about the way I have them write things up. But I was able to take what they had written and turn that into an article that will be published soon in Reflections in Nursing Leadership. So those things are kind of easy to write up because I was there with them. These are not. The Journal of Christian Nursing is a peer-reviewed journal. Reflections in Nursing Leadership is not, so that one was a little quicker turnover. But it's something that I lived. So these were, I didn't have to do a lit review to be able to write these. Another thing I do as part of my everyday practice is the academic advisor is usually in charge of the students that complete nursing externships. And we have historically allowed them to do that externship for credit for their nursing elective. So they've been doing this for several years, and we've had them write up some papers that I would read as part of that was kind of part of their experience during the externship. Well, this was a little bold on my part, and it was a learning curve, but this past summer before they got there, I totally revamped their assignments and had them write up everything that they did as a publishable product. So these are pre-licensure undergraduate 19-20-year-old students, so that scared them a bit. But my thought was, you know, instead of me just reading what we're doing here, let's go ahead and write something up that maybe we can publish. So that was our goal, and that became their didactic content. And of course, they did a lot of things at the hospital that they got credit for. But the good news is we did get one product out of that. These students, actually Harrison ended up not going, but Lauren and Rachel Santo Domingo went to the Virginia Student Nurses Association conference and presented their nursing externships, bridging the gap between school and the real world. Well, this is a student nurses conference. It was up at Virginia State University, and you can imagine it was a real popular topic. So they had about 60 students show up for this. And of course, I'm sitting having lunch with them before their presentation. I asked Lauren, you know, if she was nervous about this. Now, Lauren, look, she is about 26, but she looks like she's 20. Or Lauren is 20. Rachel looks like she's about 20 also, but she's about 26. I said, are you guys nervous at all that you're going to stand up in front of all these people and do this presentation? And Rachel said, well, you know, my first degree is in broadcasting, and I attempted that a little while. I said, all right, you guys got it. So they did this fabulous presentation that was really valuable, I think, to the students there. We also submitted with the students that completed the externship that summer. We submitted to Imprint. Imprint is the Student Nurses Association national magazine. We haven't heard back from them yet, but I am optimistic that maybe that will be published. We also submitted, another student wrote about MDA camp. She was a camp nurse there for the summer and what parents need to know. We have not heard back from Quest Magazine either, but I'm still hopeful that maybe this is a lengthy process, which that's part of the lessons learned, is to let these students know that sometimes this takes a while. And Lauren Quinn and I wrote up another thing on nursing externships for the Torch. The Torch is the state Student Nurses Association journal. They have told me they're going to use that in some way. I don't know if they're going to put it in their journal or if they're actually going to use it as part of their program in February when they have their conference. So they are going to use that in some way. So we know we're going to get at least two publications out of that. So these are the lessons learned. This is the part that I've learned so far. Some of you guys may already know this because I'm such a newbie at this. And let me back up and add one other thing to my disclaimer part. I graduated with my master's in '95 from Medical University of South Carolina. And I did have a very savvy, we had to complete a dissertation for that. And my dissertation chair did tell me, well, you need to write that up for publication. Well, because she told me to do that, I did write it up for publication, and that did get published. And then she said, and you really need to present it at the Sigma Theta Tau Regional Conference. So I did that because she told me to. That was in 1995. So on my resume, I have a 1995 publication and a 1995 presentation, and that's it. And I've been happily teaching along since then. So all of this is very new to me, to start thinking like a writer and a presenter. And now I actually think about it maybe too much, because I've gotten really busy with so many ideas to write about that I can't possibly get them all done. So I'm hoping by the time you leave here, you'll start thinking about what you're doing every day that might be something that you could submit for publication or presentation. So the lessons learned were planned ahead. Are to plan ahead. I made a big mistake with Anita and Chanel, and I said, well, just write something up and then we'll get it published. So they did. Well, now I owe them. And they wrote something up, and I thought, oh, what are we going to do with that? I don't even know how that fits into this journal that we're writing about. And I really had to then write around what they had written. I think I'm probably lucky that we were able to do that and turn them both into successful publications, because I really think next time we certainly will do an outline. We'll look at the journal ahead of time. We'll see what their expectations are, and we'll do an outline so that we know where we fit in. I have to tell you, it was really tough after the fact when they gave me Chanel her reflections and Anita what she had done in the RN to BSM program, to then figure out how to turn that into a manuscript. So certainly plan ahead, know where you're going with it, don't go with it and then try to back up and make it fit somewhere. I did it in reverse, and we'll certainly, maybe got lucky on those two. The other mistake that I made was really, I just kind of went out on a whim and talked to these students about what we were going to do, and let's try this. And they did do their part, which was just to submit a write-up, but that didn't really account for submitting it to the journal, the revision, the steps, the other steps in getting something published or presented. So it really turned into where I did maybe about 80 or 90% of the work on this, and they did 10 or 20%, which no complaints there because I didn't discuss the expectations ahead of time, but I made up my mind then in the future I wanted to have the students a little bit more involved in the whole process instead of them just kind of handing something to me and me going with it from there. So that was a big lesson learned at how much it takes to really get something through the whole process. Another lesson learned is to really contract with the students. When I met with the students for the externship program, I'd already learned that lesson, so we really talked up front about what the whole idea was going to be before we got there. Rather than it being a more casual relationship, is to be more formal about it. So, and I'm sure you guys have learned some of those lessons even in working with other colleagues, is just to get things in writing a little more, be more formal about it. And of course to establish a timeline. Again, we just kind of threw things up in the air, and wherever they landed, we went with them. Worked out for those two, but I'll be a little more proactive in the future. So this is what Kathy tells us in the workshop. When you're discussing expectations, of course you're going to talk about what your wishes are, and she uses the term dream big. Where do we want to publish? Where do we want to present? And start looking for those vehicles. She also talks about when you're discussing with the students, and I have to tell you, this part's awkward for me. Kathy's kind of taught me this, and I think it's very valuable, and I'm learning this. But fears and concerns, you know, I'm from the South. We don't really talk about everything real boldly and directly. We kind of skirt around things, and I kind of just expect that people are going to do what they're supposed to do. I don't think that's always true, and I'm sure some of you have been burned by that. Well, my normal way of doing things, if I get burned, I just go a different direction and don't maybe work with that person again. But I think a lot of these fears and concerns, if we talk about them up front, what we're really concerned about, that relationship with the student or with your colleague will work a lot better. So I've learned this certainly from Kathy, to let the person that I'm working with know what my concerns are. I'll tell you, for me, my concerns are always time. So I want to be sure, if we're making a commitment, that we both understand that this is our committed time for this. And if you commit to me, you know, we have some flexibility, we can cancel, but we've committed this time to work on this. And of course the covenant, how do we treat each other? So you can imagine the students, when I'm sitting down talking about this, they're just looking at me like, we don't know what you're talking about, but okay, if you're telling us to do this. But as part of the Work Smart steps with the students, we completed a workshop for our summer externship. Now this is not what I did with Chanel and Anita. With Chanel and Anita, I just went out and said, write something up and we'll get it published. But with the externship students, they came in, met with me, and for each of them, the first time they came in, I said, here's what I want to do for the summer. And they agreed to that and came back later with the idea of what could we write about based on the practice setting that you're going to be in. So I gave them some ideas from some journals, gave them even some ideas for topics, but really left it up to them about what we wanted to write about. And I also really wanted to reverse that 80-20 to more like 60% them and 40% me. I don't know that I got there, but we certainly did change those numbers around a little bit. So when they came back in the second time with their idea, we actually completed a worksheet. We discussed an outline. We developed a timeline, which we didn't quite meet, but we came pretty close to it. And then we also talked a little bit about manuscript review and the development of that. For the plan ahead worksheet, this is what it covers. And again, this is from Kathy. We talked about the idea. We developed the topic. We tried to get that down to a right size focus. What of this, we can't write about everything that you're doing this summer, so what part are we going to pick out of this that might be of interest to one of these journals that we're looking at? We talked about who our readers were. That was pretty easy, I think, in some of we were submitting to the Virginia Student Nurse Association journals. So the readers, of course, were other nursing students, and these writers were the experts because they are nursing students completing an externship. So I helped them through the process of understanding that that's who they're talking to, that's who their audience is, and what are these guys going to want to hear. And I was laughing because I was just in I shouldn't even say this to you guys because you guys aren't nurses and you won't appreciate this, but I'm going to do it anyway. We were just in a conference for the Student Nurses Association, and the students there were sharing with our current students about their externships. Well, they like to talk about things like, and we got to do cool CPR, and we got to start an IV, and things that are not very sympathetic to people that aren't nurses. Well, in the first write-up that one of the students wrote, she was sharing how cool it was to do CPR, and this is going to maybe go for publication. And we had to go back and revise that. And I said, you know, your audience of students, they are going to want to know all the skills that you gained, but your family might not appreciate that, you know, how cool you thought it was to practice on the CPR. So we had to talk a little bit about that. We looked at the vehicles that we were going to write to for the student nurses' journals. We were also looking, though, outside of that. And again, because we weren't necessarily going for high-impact journals, we looked at things like the hospital publications even. Could they write something up for that? We looked at, for the Quest magazine, that's MDA for parents. We looked at the brochures for camping. So we were looking at things like that, thinking, you know, whatever gets them in the practice of writing, gets their name out there, then we're good with that. And then we talked about the slant. What makes, you know, there are a lot of students that do an externship, so what really makes this a story of interest to these readers? What we, you know, came up with in the case of Rachel and Lauren was we went to the literature and found where nursing students who complete externships do better on their boards. They are the first one to get jobs. That often translates into a job transition. They're more confident and confident and competent with their nursing skills. So they brought those things into the article, and they did a great job of finding those. And then we narrowed it down to a one-sentence description, which basically becomes your title. And, oh, I didn't even know I did that little tricky thing for when I was looking back through it. So now my idea, I think, to come back to you guys is I hope now I've shared some things that I've done, and I think I've shared some of the lessons learned. Plan ahead, enter a contract. But what I want you guys to think about now is encourage you to turn your everyday practice into publishable products. At another workshop where Kathy came back, we entered into, we did a concept map. Have you guys done a concept map with anything else? Well, I almost didn't even go to this workshop because it was above me. It was for tenured faculty. I called Kathy, though, and said, you know, I'm kind of interested in coming, but I'm not there yet. Should I come as planning ahead? She said, come on. So I went and did this concept mapping. Now, the idea that she was doing was mapping out your scholarly trajectory, so for tenure track promotion. And that's what most of everybody in the room was doing. I just took it from where I'm at. And what I actually did, and I kind of encourage you to do this, and I've got the source for it if you want to do it. And I went and downloaded this concept mapping tool, and you can plug right into it, and I printed it out. I don't like my handwriting, so I wanted it on something that I could type it in. But across the top, I actually put my everyday practice. So study abroad, teach 403, academic advisor, all the things that I'm doing every day. And then under that, the next layer, because the concept map is just linking ideas together, the next layer, then I went ahead and put my publishable products for study abroad, the thing that's going to be published in Journal of Christian Nursing and the lessons learned and reflections of nursing leadership. I put those under there. Those are already done. But my goal when I did the concept map was for everything across the top to basically end in a presentation or publication. So now that's my plan for everything I do. Everything I do. So if it doesn't go down to a presentation or a publication, then I'm trying to figure out how not to do that. Other than, you know, they make me do a few things for work and stuff. But if I've already doing them, what can I do to either get a presentation or a publication out of it? So I was actually quite stunned when I did this at how many things I'd already gotten done. In addition to working with these students, Ann Campbell and I have organized a class on global health. And we have actually had a publication in R&L for that. So a global health is something I teach every day. And we have one currently in being revised for nurse educator. It's under revision, but they've already saved us a spot in May and June. Of course, that is a high impact journal, so that's kind of cool. But in May and June, let's see if I can pick up where I was. What I was talking to you about everything that I do on a daily basis, looking for a publishable product, either a publication or a presentation out of that. So I've done this across the top of my concept map. And so now when I'm working, I'm thinking, what product might come out of this? I emailed Sandy, and Sandy sent me the link to apply for free membership to the NACADA organization for advisors. And they've got a call for abstracts right now. So I'm actually thinking about submitting this presentation to them. What do you think, Sandy? I think advisors usually we all work very closely with students, but I think maybe this would be a topic that matches that for the one in Annapolis. So again, the reason I share these ideas with you is because you guys all do something different every day. So what do you do every day that someone may be interested in reading about? And it's out there because, again, now everything I do, I'm thinking about the end product for that. So, but that abstract is due today. If I get that done, so we'll see. Yeah, I think I've picked up a bad coffee habit in the process of this too. I'm usually a pretty good exerciser, but I've gotten super, super busy, and so now to reach my target heart rate, I just drink like 3 or 4 cups of coffee, and then I try to sustain that for like 40 minutes. So I got to keep going, and I figure if I reach my target heart rate by caffeine and keep that going for 40 minutes, I can skip the run. So that's part of my working smart strategy. So, what I was actually going to ask you guys to do, and I know you're maybe didn't come over with pen or pencils, but you probably all have a phone with a notepad or something. If you would do me the favor of just right now, and then I'm going to ask a few of you to share. If you would just write down what you think you do every day that might be a publishable product, even if it's just one. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes to do that. I think I have even a slide that says free write. And I want you to approach that. That's not to be confused with free bird like at a concert. But, at a concert they yell out free bird, But in academia we do the same thing, but we're like free write. So if you guys could do that for me, because I really want you to walk out of here with some ideas. So I'm gonna try not to talk for about 30 seconds, maybe do a little sing free bird while I'm waiting, do a little Jeopardy. If I leave here tomorrow, I'm going to regret that. That's going to be bad if I watch that. Yeah, that would have been great. So. Maybe a little Jeopardy jingle. I should have put in the sound if I was high speed. I see, Suzanne, that you're being a refuser. You're thinking though, right? You're pondering. Okay, so is anybody brave enough to maybe share an idea that you have something? Oh, and I forgot, I have to do, Allison reminded me to do this. This is being filmed, but the room is not mic'd, so if you have a question, please wait for her to come join you, or comment.
I'm just a little ahead of the curve here. I teach a methods class in my history department, and they have to write a project at the end of the semester that shows that they've mastered certain skills, and I have to listen to the presentations. And the department had developed a project, and it was about, historical journals in the library. And after a few years of this, I thought I was going to shoot myself if I had to listen to another one. So I thought, what could be interesting that would make sitting through the presentations, maybe 50 students, absolutely tolerable. So I decided to have them work on their genealogies, and then they could make a presentation on the most interesting thing they learned about. Well, genealogy is a huge industry. Back in the 90s, 2 Brigham Young history students got the idea from the Mormon Church to sell genealogy, and Ancestry.com is now worth something like 37. I don't know, I've got the figure in my notes. It's a huge industry, and it's produced all kinds of television shows and DVDs and genetic companies that will test your DNA and all kinds of stuff. It's a money-making thing. Well, when I first started doing these projects, gosh, the stories were so fascinating. I mean, people had such incredible stories about their families that I just loved. It was a joy to sit there and listen to. And as the years went on, some of the stories were so compelling that I decided I needed to start collecting them and asking the students if I could keep them and would they sign a release that I might be able to use them at some point, not really knowing what I was going to do with them. And so last year, I went to the University of Richmond and they asked me to come and speak at graduation. And knowing that there would be all these grandparents in the audience, I asked my students if I could use their projects, and I crafted this kind of narrative about families and stories and how history is marketable and how your history graduate can make a fortune. And that, you always get these parents, oh my gosh, my son's going to be a history major, how will he ever survive? You know? and so I was trying to combine all these things. And the audience loved it. You know, the grandparents came up and told me it was fantastic. So I've been trying to put together something that I might publish, but I also thought for the university that alumni have stories, that it might make a fantastic project through the Center for Learning Technologies to have alumni work with historians to collect data that, you know, might interest donors, but might make a great narrative of ODU that's tied to the families that have been here and the legacies and that sort of thing. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's certainly something that's been building and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and just kind of started by me trying to figure out what might be interesting for the students that we could work more together on.
And I think at the beginning, part of maybe what you said is key. If it's something that you're really excited about, and you said you just found the story so compelling, then chances are that somebody else wants to hear about it. So.
I'm just curious, how many hours a week do you have to spend to encourage one graduate student to collaborate with you to write a joint paper? Approximately, I'm not looking further.
You know, I'm not sure that I could even tabulate those hours. I will tell you it has kept me very busy.
Okay.
But I think that maybe this doesn't directly answer your question, but I think by looking at what I'm already doing every day is allowing me to work smarter. Otherwise, that's the only way I could get any of this done.
So maybe another question might take care of this problem that I'm trying to resolve in my own situation. How many graduate students on an average in your department with each faculty member advising, including the number of you advising?
Well, I'm the undergraduate faculty, and I think it's around 1 million. It is actually, we do central advising. We have about 500 students. We have 2 programs. So it is tremendous. It's a tremendous load. We have pre-licensure students somewhere under probably 270, and then maybe another 250 in our post-licensure program. They're kind of hard to track because they come and go a little bit. But it is a tremendous load. But I think one thing that I've done that's allowed me to spend some hours on this is I've taken some of the hours that I was already doing. For example, the externship students, they have always written papers that I would then have to read and grade and return to them. So now those assignments are gone, they're now writing manuscripts. So they're a little more time consuming because then I send them back, the students revise them, they send them back to me, and there's a lot more of this. But I've tried to cut out some of the assignments that I didn't really think had the same value and direct it toward this. They're getting the same content out of it, but they're getting a little more. Maybe they're getting a publishable product, but they're learning this writing process, which I hope, these are undergraduate students, they haven't done much of this, so I hope it's something they'll think about in the future.
Now, when you were in graduate school yourself, how many people was your advisor advising, including you? And then encouraging you
That
to
was
write
95,
papers?
right. That was 95, probably 12.
Correct. Now, I am dealing with a situation where I have anywhere between 30 and 40 graduate students, master's and PhD. Do you have a suggestion how I can interact with that many students to encourage each one of them on a weekly or even on a monthly basis?
I think Kat, she works with quite a few. She's got a suggestion for you.
I think to go backwards, you heard Janice is saying, she's giving me some great ideas. Because I'm in your circumstances where I've worked solely with graduate students, masters, and then doctoral students, and I've had courses with 43 doctoral students at one time.
Yeah.
And what I learned with that is there's a way to provide a platform for them, an interactive written and verbal platform online, where I provide the feedback. I'm going to do it again. I think there's only going to be 20-something, but I'm going to do it come spring, and a capstone course, and my purpose in the course is to teach them to write for publication. Yeah, there are 5, 6, or 7, or 8 students that I work with one-on-one, and we do the writing. And it's unbelievably time-intensive. I know what you're saying. So in hearing her publication, I'm thinking, gosh, I'm working too hard. And I'm thinking, why don't I look at it from another perspective. Not necessarily take the graduate students and we're writing up all this database stuff and looking at their work from that direction, but I teach about health disparities to graduate students. Why don't I write about the process of how you teach about health disparities, which is key in our country, to graduate students? And I thought I'd write about journaling and all kinds of things, critical thought questions, use of debates online. And that's a publication that I could get to students who have a real interest in it, and we could do other publications. So that's just 3, but it's from the same idea.
I got one other question, probably not directly relevant to this topic here, but you did project the journal of a name, Journal of Christian Nursing. Now, I'm a civil engineering professor, but I am also licensed with the nursing board as a therapist for nuclear energy is another neuromuscular pain therapy. Okay, so I'm a pain therapist as well as I'm a lymphedema physiotherapist on a part-time basis. I do it over the weekends in a small clinic. Never in my training in that other area, I've ever seen any such name as Christian nursing. How is it different from Jewish nursing or Buddhist nursing or some other kind of nursing?
Well, nurses are extremely culturally sensitive because we care for everyone in their worst case scenario, and it can be a very intimate environment. In that case, for that journal, it just happened to be one that I know about. But the student that went on that trip with me had already just told me offline that she is a Christian. So we selected that journal because I went to her and said, this journal is a Christian journal, and part of their focus is to minister to other Christian nurses. So are you comfortable with that slant? Because that's going to be part of that expectation. Now again, she's already told me that she's a Christian. I don't know if she's comfortable writing that. But she was. She was very comfortable, so that worked out. Now, I don't think we have a journal of Jewish nursing. I don't think we have a journal for it, but that's a journal that someone's come up with that publishes and is peer-reviewed.
So technically, from a nursing standpoint, there is no difference in the protocols used for patients in Christian nursing versus Jewish nursing?
No, I think it's just the focus of that journal.
I see.
The audience for that journal is Christian nurses.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody else? You might want to share their
Can you talk about how many of these journals you publish that are peer-reviewed? I mean, it's hard to tell from the titles. And what kind of scholarship are you talking about? Because journals vary by discipline. Are you talking about very brief articles? Are you talking, I mean, I'd be interested to know in the...
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. I think, as I alluded to at the beginning, I think I really started out wanting some success. So the first things that we submitted to were not peer-reviewed. Reflections of Nursing Leadership is, Sigma Theta Tau is our big honor society, and the journal of, what's the name of that journal? International Nursing Journal? What's Sigma's journal? Well, they have a peer-reviewed journal that is...
the Journal of International Scholarship.
Journal of International Scholarship. They have a peer-reviewed journal, but then they also have kind of the more user-friendly journal. So I went with the more user-friendly journal initially. It is a little bit easier to get published in, and the articles are a little bit shorter, and that gave me that initial success. But as part of this, I learned to write a query letter. I learned to interact with the editor. I actually met the editor. Now I know him on a first-name basis at the conference that I was just at in Texas. But from there now, I have actually increased with some confidence and with some practice. Have now almost been accepted at Nurse Educator. They've saved the date. Journal of Christian Nursing, that one is peer-reviewed and high impact. Journal of Christian Nursing is peer-reviewed. I recently submitted, just as part of this whole process, not on publishing with students, but I just started my PhD in August. And one of the assignments for my philosophy class is to complete a lit review on best practices in a nursing-related topic. So before I ever even started that write-up, I started thinking, okay, well, where could this also be published? So, of course, that is a lengthier, more in-depth article, but I had to do it as part of my class, and before I wrote it, I was already looking at the journals that published that type of lit review. So both. I think I've done both, and I think the smaller publications have just been kind of fun. It's fun to get your name in something, and to and one of them I was excited. The Reflections in Nursing Leadership that's the Sigma Theta Tau's friendly, user-friendly one. Not a peer-reviewed journal, but Ann and I were doing a lit search the other day on global health for our class. We came up number 7 on that lit search on the terms we use. We're like, oh, look at that, we're in there. So, you can be high impact sometimes without being high impact just by who you reach. Some are shorter, some are longer. The nurse educator one started out as a full article that we were submitting. The editor came back and said, we like the topic, we really don't want that much, we want you to present this to teaching tools. So what will get published out of that will be smaller, but we've gained the confidence to get a little bit bigger and go a little further with it.
Well, can you explain what you think of it? Do you think of it more stage-wise, or I mean, it just varies so by discipline.
Sure.
So I just need to kind of have a sense of what you're talking about.
Okay. The lit review that I just submitted was 2,500 words. The nurse educator one was initially 3,000 words. By the time we resubmit it, it's probably going to be 1,500. The RNL initial one, Wiki Travels, was probably 4 or 5 pages that turned into just by the time they printed it in their single space, it was about 1.5 pages in their journal. The ones that we did with the students, they were somewhere between 7 to 11 pages, double-spaced APA. Does that give you an idea?
Thanks.
So it's varied.
It does vary. It varies per discipline. Yet, depending on your work, we publish things that are like a qualitative work that I do. It might be 40 pages when published. Brief research briefs may be 8, but many times they're 25 to 30 pages published. So it just depends on the type of work you're doing in nursing, depending on, so we can't really look at word count or page limit. It just depends on the type of work that's being published.
I assume part of what you were wanting to know, though, is how long this takes me and how much work has gone into that. The good news, I think, for me is since I've started my PhD, I'm really excited to be thinking about my PhD in terms of what products am I going to get out of that, because I've got to do that anyway. So my research that I'll do for that, I assume that will be a little bit different. Those may be bigger publications when I've got the research to go with that. Right now, I'm really just kind of talking about what I do every day, and those have been a little more user-friendly.
I just wanted to point out that we've been focusing on undergraduate research in the university for the past few years now, and we've opened a journal of undergraduate research, which is a great opening for young students to get started. I shouldn't say young, but beginning students to get started. And also we take the students to conferences and host presentations. For the graduate students, we've revamped the Graduate Achievement Day, so that will be coming again in the spring, and it'll be a bigger event than it was last year, so give them a possibility. But then as you're moving into graduate student work and then into one's own publications, there are a range of journals in all disciplines, and I can't speak to history and that, but I know that certainly in the sciences there are things like the Journal of Geoscience Education, the American Physics Society has its education journals. Many disciplines have an education journal that is specifically about the learning process and about working with students in the class. And a lot of the work that we do as faculty is, particularly here at ODU, is innovative and it's exciting, and it's another form of publication. That's not the high impact, but it's important to get the work out. And sometimes, especially if it's been a long time since you've written anything, it gets you back in the flow of writing and gets back in that process. The only downside I see for the student's perspective is that sometimes that review process for the higher impact journals, for when you're starting to really into the mainstream, as it were, it takes time. And so you might be 3 months, if you're lucky, before you get the reviews back, and then they say accepted subject to major revision, so you redo all that, and it goes back out again, and sometimes it can be a year and a half. And then they say, congratulations, it will be published in another 9 months. And so it's a long time sometimes from the initial submission through that process, and having patience and be prepared to accept that sometimes there'll be rejections, and looking at well, maybe I didn't send it to the right journal, or maybe I just wasn't persuasive in the way I put the material together. But it is a continuum, and I applaud you for being ambitious and starting down the path and having that in your mind, having the broader outcome of the work in your mind throughout. It's great.
I would say that was part of the lessons learned in this process too, because for the first 2 students, Chanel and Anita, we submitted to the journals, and then of course I got back the yes with revisions. Well, because I had not contracted with these students and really talked them through that process, I handled that myself. Kat helped me with one of them, but we revised and resubmitted, but I didn't even include the students in that because I almost felt like it was unfair to them. They were over it, done. They'd actually already graduated. Of course, now they're excited that we're almost there. These are probably coming out in the next few months. So now one of them keeps emailing me, have you heard anything yet? Have you heard anything yet? But I think with the students in the summer, the externship students, that was a tough adjustment for them, and I did talk about it up front because I've gotten a little bit smarter. But they are very used to submitting a paper, and then they're done with it. And they might get the grade back and read the comments, but they are done with it. So when they submitted something to me, and then I said, okay, work on this and revise this. And then they submitted it again, and I said, oh, okay, work on this and revise this. They're kind of like, what? I've already crossed that paper off the list. Now, thankfully, we had already contracted, and I told them that's how it would work, but it is still sometimes hard to get your mind wrapped around that. And it was also difficult with the undergraduate students to get them to change their voice to the audience instead of sounding like they were writing for me or for a paper assignment. So that was a big adjustment for them and a big lesson learned.
Yeah. I'm Chandra De Silva, I'm a historian. And actually I love what you're doing because of a number of reasons. First of all, we are in the middle of a QEP where we are talking about writing, and all of this fits in really well. And for me, the encouragement of writing and good writing is an essential part of teaching. And what I do sometimes when I'm awake in the middle of the night is I actually surf the web. And if you do this, you get across a number of blogs and a number of internet places where people who are actually in high school write excellent articles on various topics. So on the one hand, there are students who come to us who need more direction. But there are also students who come to us who actually have had some experience in publishing even before they come to college and would love to have their teachers encourage them while they're here. So I'm looking at this also as a retention tool for our best students. And your approach of using what we do in order to write about it is something that the students will love. So I'm just saying, I love what you're doing. I hope more people do this.
Thank you for your comments. That's been exciting for me too. My niece has just finished up her undergraduate program, and because this is what I do, of course I like to talk about to my family what they're doing in their educational pursuits. And she actually had a chance to partner with her professor and present at a big APA, American Psychological Association conference. And then of course she sent that to me. I looked at her, but I talked to her and said, Whitney, you have to, and she's a fabulous writer. And I don't know if she even realizes how gifted she is because she just writes naturally. I said, Whitney, you've got to write more of this up. Well, she wrote back, she ignored my email. And about 3 or 4 months later, she said, okay, I did what you said. I decided not to be overwhelmed by what you said, and I went ahead and wrote it up, and I'm going to be published in the Journal for University of South Carolina, where all she wrote up was her experiences about partnering with the faculty. And so they did this huge write-up, they put a picture in it, and it's in print. So it was really exciting, and for me, my part of that was just to suggest it to her. She really completely did all the work, but it's just a part of thinking about what do we do every day that somebody wants to read about. So it's been exciting for me too.
Can I just add, completely different perspective. We're talking about whether it's good for the student, whether it's good for the faculty member. No matter what the journal is, it's a good thing to get ODU's name out there.
Absolutely.
If they like the article, you know, we have people reading these all the time, and if we have charming students writing about things that happen here, that can't help but get us good students.
Absolutely, yes. I think that's, you know, when I said sometimes high impact is not what we define as high impact. Our name's getting out there, and we're, and my other thought on working with the students for the externships, they were going to learn something during this process. Whether we get a product out of it or not, it was still going to be a learning process, so there was really a no-lose on that. So it's just changing the assignments instead of them writing it just for me. We were writing it where it could possibly go somewhere else.
Just one other suggestion that I usually do for students too is to suggest they do a book review, because a lot of publications are looking for just a new book review, and everybody's got books coming out, so that one is simple and it does get their name. Super practice.
And Chandra, I do have to share with you that the free write that I put on here when I ask you guys to do that independently instead of just raising your hand, I learned that at the writing workshop when we had breakfast in the tent, because I think, were you there, Allison? I think, you know, you guys told us that if we just ask for everybody's ideas, then only the extroverts will do that. So that's why I added that. So I'm learning from you and incorporating that as well. Thank you guys for coming a lot. I really I enjoyed getting this together. I will tell you that I've already been thinking, okay, how can I maybe write this up and be published somewhere, because that's now what I'm doing. So as soon as I can get to that, maybe finish up this semester. This has been a crazy week coming back after the Thanksgiving break and just trying to wrap things up. But this is a lot of fun to get to share this, and hopefully it'll generate some ideas so that not to increase our workload, but just to what are we already doing that we may be able to publish for, like you said, the faculty's benefits, for the benefit of the students and for the benefit of ODU. So I hope you'll be able to take something away from this that'll help you with that. Thanks for coming.